Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around, only Dad was dying. This time around, it's both of us.
If you are a follower of Alex's other video series, since the last time we talked, I had this congestion, but went to make sure I didn't have the flu or something like that. Unfortunately, tested positive for the coronavirus, which then meant that all of us had to test for it, and Alex and his brother and his mother, my wife, also tested positive. So we're all at home for the most part. I've still gone up and done Territorial Christmas Carol. But other than that, we're all at least still alive and working functionally.
Yeah, so the past 4 reactions or so that I recorded have all been very low energy sort of things. And this is going to continue pretty much for just a little bit until things get better. With any luck, we will be better by next week. Because, you look at him, he's already better than last week, so that's a start. But the good news is, I'm told that it's okay, because these aren't very interesting episodes anyway. Oh. So, last time around, we started the Invasion of Time. Do you remember what happened?
Vaguely. I remember that the Doctor and Leela went back to Gallifrey, but as it turns out, he was either under the influence or somehow being guided by some alien group who wanted to take over. But Leela managed to escape out into the Gallifreyan countryside, and as she does, stirred up the rabble and is about to start another revolution on yet another planet.
Yeah, pretty much. So the Doctor has allowed the Vardans to take over Gallifrey, and
these are these sparkly invisible creatures?
Yes. Okay. And but he has a plan. He just couldn't tell anybody because they are telepathic, and even someone like Chancellor Barusa could be easily read. So, but he managed to make a lead-lined room in Gallifrey, his presidential office.
I remember that, yeah.
And so he was able to talk to Barusa and tell him of his plan. So yeah. Leela has met up with the Gallifreyan barbarians, who are basically just the extreme doomsday preppers that don't live in the suburban communities of Gallifrey, I guess. So yeah. And I'm sure, there's a revolution in there somewhere. However, from what I hear on Twitter and everything, this is not a highly regarded episode, and neither was Underworld, for that matter. So, yeah, interesting stuff there. But it's all right. It's an interesting premise, but we'll see where it goes in these last 3 episodes. But yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You got anything else?
I just wanted to say, for those of you who've ever been performers, the first week we did Territorial Christmas Carol was very easy. We had 2 performances, one on Friday night, one on Saturday night. This past week, I did a Thursday night performance, a Friday morning performance, curtain at 11, a Friday night performance, curtain at 8, a Saturday matinee performance at 2, a Saturday night performance at 8, and a Sunday afternoon at 2. So I've done 6 performances in 4 days. And I have 2 more weeks of that.
Yeah, and you would think that he would be so Christmas caroled out. Evidently he's not, because he keeps making us watch more Christmas Carol.
Well, again, I'm sure, especially our British viewers will understand. It's not that I'm a purist, but let's face it, the Charles Dickens Christmas Carol is the best. Anything that is faithful to that novel, and I include in that the Muppets Christmas Carol, because that's literally one of the more faithful ones, because it actually narrates in Dickens' own words. But what we're doing is taking a character named Charlie, who happens to be going through Oklahoma Territory in 1893, and he's been going around the West collecting stories and things like that, and he gets stranded in Guthrie, which was the territorial capital, on his way back to Kansas City, and he gets taken to a local home so that he doesn't freeze out in the cold waiting for the train, and he comes into contact with his family called the Moody's, who have invited some neighbors over, and it turns out that The custom is everybody brings somebody a gift, but not in the traditional sense that we think of now as, gift for toys for kids. But like one of them brings candles, and one of them brings oranges, one of them brings smoked bacon. But of course, Charlie, being a traveler, doesn't have anything. And he says, well, I don't have a gift, but I could tell you a story. And they say, oh, that would be great. So he sets about telling the story of the first Christmas in Indian Territory in 1889. And it's the same basic idea of the Christmas Carol, except that Ebenezer Scrooge, me, is now what they call a land baron. This is a guy who came in after the land run, set up a business in the buying and selling of land claims, because some of the people who claimed land during the land run couldn't keep up with, the farming and the clearing of the trees and the rocks and all that sort of stuff, and ended up selling. And those land barons would, buy a claim for $50 and turn around and sell it for $2,000. So it's the same sort of thing. But again, I'm dressed in cowboy boots, and I've got a heavy denim long frock coat, and I've got a vest and a shirt and all this. I'm just weighted down with all of these clothes and a big old Stetson cowboy hat, and I'm on stage literally for all but about 10 seconds in the middle of the first act. There's the Moody frame story right at the beginning of the show, which is about 4 or 5 minutes. Then once I come on, I'd only go off stage one time to change out of my coat into my dressing gown, and then I'm on stage for the rest of the show. For 2 hours, I'm up there lugging my heavy coat and my even heavier body around, and it's just, 6 shows in 4 days gets a little exhausting.
On top of the fact that he's nearly 71 years old and has the coronavirus. As evident by that.
Sorry.
And we should go ahead and put it out. We're going to get to Doctor Who in a second, by the way. We should put it out there because I feel like somebody's going to ask, who's your favorite Scrooge of the movies and such?
Of all the movies. Well, again, somewhat controversial choice. I think Michael Caine was wonderful in Territorial Christmas Carol. Not Territorial Christmas. Muppets. Christmas. Okay. I know this will probably sound heretical, but I wasn't much of a fan of Alistair Sim, or there was another guy, Reginald, somebody who did it in the early 50s, I think. I love George C. Scott. I realize he's an American, but the rest of the characters in that, Roger Rees and Warner, what was his name? David Warner, and all the rest of them. Even Albert Finney in Scrooge, the musical, was pretty good. Absolutely loathed the TNT production. Was that Richard Grant? Or something?
No, that was TNT.
Yeah, the 3-part weird miniseries we watched last year or the year before.
Oh, okay. That's the FX one with Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce.
Yeah.
Oh.
The TNT one is the Patrick Stewart one.
Patrick
with
Stewart
Richard Grant as
Patrick Stewart's okay. I was expecting much better from him, quite honestly. But the FX Christmas Carol, where it really shouldn't be called a Christmas Carol at all. That's an interesting story if they wanted to present it, but it's absolutely nothing. Charles Dickens, if he wasn't already dead, that show would have killed him, because it is so, and it's such an antithesis to what he actually was writing about. So, anyway.
And see, it can, to tell you something about it, is that the near purist, he absolutely despised it. I loved it because it was awful. It's like watching The Room. It's you gotta laugh at it, And maybe one day we'll just do a deep dive where he rants about it scene by scene, and I just sit here and I laugh at him. So,
well, and again, the purist in me, I mentioned before I've adapted my own version of Christmas Carol, and I call it the novel on stage, because when the characters come out, the narrator is essentially Charles Dickens, and he literally opens the show with Marley was dead to begin with. But then he, as many characters do, or many of the adaptations do, he takes the part of Fred, Scrooge's nephew. But when they talk to each other, they also include Dickens' dialogue. So, for example, when he says, old Marley was as dead as a doornail. But then he stops and he looks at the audience and says, now, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I mean, I might have been inclined to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade, but the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my own hallowed hood should not disturb it, or the country's done for. You'll therefore permit me to repeat emphatically, Marley was as dead as a doornail. And then he goes on. And so the characters not only use the dialogue, the actual dialogue from the book, they also use the narration from the book to set up, it was foggy outside and the clock struck one. It sounded like there were icicles in it. So it's a lot of fun to do that because you get to hear Dickens' own words. In the entire script, there's only about 10 words that I put in there because words that Dickens used in 1843, there are some words that people simply do not recognize today, and I had to adapt those as best I could so that a modern audience would understand what he was talking about.
Well, yeah. And honestly, when you said that Muppets Christmas Carol is one of the more faithful adaptations, it honestly reminds me of the Count of Monte Cristo anime that I've forced you to watch for days on end. Despite being set in the year 5000 in space France and everything, it's still one of the more accurate adaptations of the Count of Monte Cristo. Yeah. So mainly just because it has the time to be that.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I'll look over at the clock and think, I guess we should get started on, this episode of Doctor Who. But then I thought, I feel like more people would actually be more interested in that than this episode. So, but we got to get to it at some point.
All right, let's do it.
Let's just go ahead and jump right into the Invasion of Time. Here we go. Also, I heard that David Agnew is not a real name.
Oh.
And I think this was like a replacement story at the last second.
Three guys shoot four guys.
No.
Travel along any form of broadcast wavelengths.
Yes. And materialize at the end of it. But until they do materialize, I can't identify their planet of origin and time loop it.
But you have access to the greatest source of knowledge in the universe.
Well, I do talk to myself sometimes, yes.
I mean the Matrix.
Oh, that old thing.
Banishing Leela and the others was the best way of protecting them.
It might just work. Give me your helmet.
He's mad. One of us is mad. It's either him.
And all the rebels are dead. Yes, all except
I like seeing it
Commander
use a
F.
chair.
There is a way.
Well, proceed.
Well, I kind of thought we would go meet Rassilon.
Doctor! We are safe now.
Oh no, space Nazis.
Look.
The Rocketeer.
Look. That was the first time the Goofy design was kind of better.
Attack the Chancellor Guards. Create a diversion. I shall enter from the other side with Rodana and Jasko.
That sounds good. Take care, though.
You too.
Come on, then.
You know what I just thought? Do you think we might leave Leela here? It is the end of the season.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, this would be the spot to do it.
Well,
And the young man that he's given the helmet to and everything would make an interesting companion.
well.
Kind of like a Stephen.
What's the matter?
We've won again. I sent the invaders back to their own planet.
Oh, Doctor!
Well, that worked.
Castellan?
Is it over?
Yes. It's been a long, hard road, but at last, the future of Gallifrey is assured. What are you looking
No.
All right. You know, someone told me that this was essentially 2 stories in one.
Yeah.
He did make a hole right over the Citadel, so I guess we move on into the second part of this story, which is the Sontarans.
That's funny. Again, pardon the nose.
And the coughs.
And the coughs. So.
Oh.
Well, here's the deal. We already know we love the Sontarans.
Yeah.
Because they're just so cheesily bad. And because the Vardens were nobody. I mean, it's a bunch of, nasally high-pitched, first they're aluminium sparklies, and then they're, neo-Nazi rocketeers. But they didn't do anything.
No. It's such a strange thing. It's like I expected more from them.
Yeah.
But I guess I expected them to be throughout the rest of this the story,
Unless the Vardens were set up by the Sontarans.
Maybe, I don't know. It's very strange, but it's just so weird just to transition, and now just a different enemy entirely on Gallifrey.
And
so
that's very similar to the twist, was it, when it was the Draconians, and it suddenly realized that the whole thing had been set up by the Daleks instead. It's that kind of a twist.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So, yeah, interesting. And now another short Sontaran episode, I guess. So, alrighty.
And I thought someone had said the Sontarans didn't come back until Nuhu.
I don't know. But I guess none. So.
Sontaran troopers.
I am Commander Starr of the Sontaran Special Space Service.
Yes. Isn't that carrying alliteration a little far?
You are not like the Vardens.
Vardens. They were expendable. They had served their purpose to open up the force field and let us in.
That's a very complicated way of doing this.
The ultimate goal is victory.
Victory over whom?
Victory over all.
Victory over
Über
time.
alles.
What?
Then I shall kill him.
You don't know how.
Do you know?
Oh, yes.
Well, tell me.
Small vein back of the neck.
Was that all?
Ooh. Good job.
That's not going to hold forever, sir.
A heavy, easily fusible, soft, malleable base metal such as lead is not the best defense against heat-intensive weaponry.
I agree.
Yeah, but they're not
Fortunately,
using that. They're
someone
using their
had to
shoulders.
to reinforce.
Why was K9 going backwards?
These guys are pretty good.
If you wanted to hide a tree, where would you hide it? In a forest.
I've read your essay on reason. Which one is it?
You must choose, but choose wisely.
So undignified. Run like this for centuries.
Well, that probably made it worse.
They could rampage right to the whole universe. Not to
Just this universe. All the universes. Nasty thought, isn't it? That's why I had to stop them. Just had to.
Winkelgruber.
Winkelgruber. Are you listening to what I was saying?
Winkelgruber.
Winkelgruber.
No, now what were you saying?
I was saying.
It's interesting. I just imagine getting the script and it's like, you want me to say what?
Above all the great.
All right, Tom. Now just mug for about 10 seconds or so.
Mug for 6 seasons.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what he does.
Uh,
Well, that is interesting. Now, I realize it's very, complicated. We have to do this, and this. And it would be a lot better if the action were a little more animated. But yeah, the whole sequence with her and the Finkelgruber.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those... I'm curious to see what the fans say of this one. Because I think... I get that it's not the greatest story ever written, but... Honestly, there's just enough good ideas in here to where I'm like, well, okay, I at least got something out of it.
Yeah.
Like, I like, what was the guy's name? The guy that tried to kill him?
Oh, Andred?
Yeah, Andred. I like him. I like Rodan. I think she could be an interesting companion.
Yeah.
And honestly, just having the Sontarans, they're just... vastly more interesting than even when they're doing pretty standard stuff. It's just more interesting.
I am slightly disappointed that once the Sontarans appeared, they didn't take off their helmets.
Yeah.
And I realize they're probably trying to save on the makeup and everything, but let's face it, the whole reason we love the Sontarans is because they've got that gigantic bubble head, and it's so much fun to watch them.
Yeah. And also just, I like the interaction between the Doctor and Barusa. Like, that's really interesting, seeing this sort of, this sort of back and forth where it's like, okay, these two, clearly, they go back a long time.
Yeah.
Like, 400 or 500, 1,000 years ago when he was in the academy, and clearly, Barusa probably had his issues with the Doctor back then, but he was an interesting student, So...
And, it's just, there's so much... very subtle lore going on there. I mean, when he says, I haven't run in centuries, it's so undignified.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel about running, by the way. It's so undignified.
Yeah, it's almost a slight Anakin and Obi-Wan, except if Obi-Wan was just less active. So yeah, that's interesting. And it's also interesting to think, because you have that sort of image in your mind of... the Academy when the Doctor was a very young, I assume teenage William Hartnell, and how Barusa was back then. I would also then throw in what was the dynamic like with a young Master, who I'm pretty sure at this point they've said he did go to the Academy with the Doctor. So all that's really good, and honestly, even with something as... I guess sort of standard as the Sontaran plot and Kellner helping them, I'd still just find that interesting. The Sontarans are interesting. Kellner, he's just slimy enough to pass.
But I was just thinking, he's very similar to the Gatherer from the Sunmakers. If he'd been a little bit more obsequious, it would have been a little bit funnier. He's unctuous, he's oily as it is, but if they could have pushed him just a little bit further, that would have made this a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, so.
Where are the others?
In the bathroom.
The bathroom?
Yes, in the bathroom.
You got lost, didn't you?
Well, it's bigger than it looks, your TARDIS.
No, the party hunters got lost. Don't you think she got lost?
How do you know?
I think you got lost.
Listen, Doctor,
Come
you
on,
gave me the wrong
you got
directions.
lost.
How could you possibly expect me to follow those directions?
You got lost.
But you don't really see, bricks and general piping in the TARDIS.
Ah, here we go. Oh, they're very different.
This machine.
This guy hasn't been getting enough sleep. He's got a bit of a goatee.
Rubbish. Make it work, or you'll die.
They're too flesh colored. They need to be
Yeah.
Well,
greenish gray that they were.
Well,
He has fastened it with some kind of locking device from the other side, sir.
A piece of wood.
Trapped in here now. I will deal with him personally.
That's nothing to worry about. I've got wonderful sense of direction.
Dude, what is this part of the TARDIS?
Sense of direction.
Where are we?
Storeroom 23A.
Where are we going?
The workshop.
Basically, we're just going around the BBC studio, I think.
What nobody understands
Oh.
is the advantage of my antiquated
And one more time. Oh, okay.
Where are we now?
service tunnel, blue section 25. Everything's going to be all right. You just follow me.
Yep, there they go.
I'm as tight as like the back of my hand.
Oh, this is different.
Come on, we can't sit around here all day.
You just said you wanted to
I
rest.
did, I've just had one. Let's go and find K9.
K9?
Must be the Roman room.
No.
What is it?
Early warning. Something's broken in upstairs.
It made it through the one plank of wood.
We will do battle on your own ground, Doctor.
I want this to be like Home Alone now.
Titanic.
No. Oh, Burgers have found the bar.
I kept you waiting, Chancellor.
I'm quite comfortable, thank you.
I had nothing to do with this, I promise you.
Oh, jeez. I'll fall in. Oh, so close.
Would you stabilize your district infrastructure, President?
Come on, pull yourself together, Bruce.
It does make me wonder, does the Doctor have the TARDIS set up specifically to be entertaining? That's some pretty bad tunnel vision.
You shot Donald Duck. Sontaran flytrap.
Oh! Well, that guy's dead. Anyway. Put your scarf up a bit.
You know how helpless we are against the Sontarans. I forbid you to use it. You should never have constructed it.
But what is it?
It's the ultimate weapon, the TMAT gun.
That's impossible.
You built it under hypnosis. But how to arm it?
If we cannot control the power of the Time Lords, then we shall destroy it. Goodbye, Doctor.
Have you forgotten your induction?
My induction?
Bernard? Sontaran? Doctor, you saved Galaxy.
I have. Oh, what do you think of that, Lena?
I think you've gone mad.
He remembers nothing of it. It is the wisdom of Rassilon.
Or he does remember it and he's just trying to get out of it.
I'm staying.
Staying here. Why? Ah, I see.
I hope that...
Yes, I'm sure you do hope. She'll look after you. She's terribly good with a knife. Come, canine.
Negative. I remain.
Here.
Affirmative.
Why?
To look after the mistress.
Where will he go now?
Somewhere else?
Maybe just south of London. Oh, he just got another.
K9 Mark II.
Alrighty. That's it.
Well, that was certainly a... What do they call it? Mixtape of their various... Alright, so we get the Vardans, who are supposedly trying to take over the Time Lords of Gallifrey, only to be supplanted by the Sontarans, who decide if they can't control the Time Lords, they will destroy them, including the entire galaxy. You have the entire... We finally get to see the multiple levels of the TARDIS, including a swimming pool,
Yeah.
and a man-eating plant, and various levels of factory workshop type stuff. The sick bay. It's interesting that obviously they filmed that all in one spot.
Yeah.
But it, again, I'm sure we will see later, because we saw, for example, in the movie, how the seventh Doctor, who had done it up in a very Victorian style.
Yeah.
After he had, we assume, stopped, gallivanting around the galaxy. So it just would have been interesting to see a little bit more different stuff rather than all the same sort of... But anyway, I understand, they're working on a budget. And it's, again, like you said, it's like, what else can we put into this 6-part story to end the season? So...
Yeah, because I think this was sort of... There was supposed to be a different story, but at the last second they had to quickly rewrite and make this instead. So yeah, they just did the best they could and passed off, the various rooms in the BBC studio to work as the TARDIS set, which at the very least it slightly works with the control room set, because every control room sort of is the basis of where the rest of the TARDIS sets go. And there's one episode with the 11th Doctor called Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, where his is a more, I don't know how to describe it, I guess sort of a metallic sort of TARDIS, and that whole style continues. They built more sets to look a lot more like that one. So still, it does sort of work for this version of the control room, at least. And we do see with the 8th Doctor and the 7th Doctor, who designed that version of the TARDIS, that sort of Victorian yet sort of gothic control room does sort of continue on all the way to where the Eye of Harmony is at the climax of the movie. So yeah, I guess I can understand why this would be sort of low rated with the fan base for the 4th Doctor, but it's all right. It's 6 inoffensive episodes, I feel like. It's just sort of, there you go.
And it's another one that, quite seriously, I understand the need to do the repetitive things over and over again to show that the TARDIS is pretty much unlimited. But the whole thing could have been done in 4 episodes easily.
Yeah. So, which, I mean, I guess that's sort of the thing. It was done in 4 episodes, and then the Sontarans showed up. So they had to get those extra 2, because at some point, I don't remember when, it might have been around the third Doctor's era or somewhere in there when they decided that they would have just a bunch of 4-episode stories, and then they would always end on a 6-episode story. So yeah, they had to have 6 episodes. They wrote 4, then they realized they needed to keep going. So yeah, we had everything with the force field and bringing it down and using the power of Rassilon. We didn't see Rassilon. I kind of figured he would go into the Matrix and meet Rassilon and learn how to do this, but then he didn't. He just sort of closed his eyes for a second and was like, "Oh, I got it. We're good to go." So yeah. And so that worked, and the Vardans were able to materialize into just some dudes, honestly. And I see, that's the thing, is that their original look of, the green screened transparent aluminum shaking, it's not amazing. It's not the worst thing ever. But it's not amazing. But then when you see it's just some guys in some helmets and some green jumpsuits, it's like, oh boy, it's a bit more disappointing when you see what they actually are. So
now, yeah, they were humanoid, but if they had even some kind of just very basic alien type of facial structure, would have been much better.
Yeah, so but he was able to find their planet of origin, and he also specifically time looped them, which I feel like the more you think about that, the more harsh of a punishment that is. Like, it's not just I defeated you. It's he sent them back and made sure they could never progress as a society to the point where they could go up into space, presumably.
Yeah.
So yeah. So a little harsh, but I guess I understand where he's coming from. Granted, he doesn't do that to the Sontarans. So, and technically, that battle fleet is still up there. Yeah. It just can't get in, so it's just got to leave now. So, but he doesn't go in and loop the Sontarans, who he has met multiple times, and have multiple invasions that they want to do. So
yeah, and gotta say the new Sontaran makeup, it's not doing it for me.
Yeah,
because again, they were. First of all, there was strangely too much definition of the face. The original ones, it was just the basic human face inside of the gigantic head, but this one had the big lines in the ears and everything, and the fact that it was flesh colored instead of the grayish green that it had been before, very sweaty looking. It wasn't as good as the originals, but also even if it were standalone, I would look at that and go, yeah, it's not very good.
Yeah, it seems that they're trying to make every Sontaran distinct, And that's an interesting thing, because in modern Doctor Who, they basically gave up on that.
Yeah, well, he said, they're clones of each other. Clone 1 million in 4 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, so they pretty much, in modern Doctor Who, they stick to one design. While they have a couple different Sontaran characters, they all pretty much look the same. Yeah. So, at least for the most part, when they were more prevalent. But they definitely are not... They haven't been as good as that first one. And honestly, they haven't been as interesting as that first one, too. So, they've kind of sort of gone into the standard role of, well, we must invade, and we're just going to do this thing and invade, and they could be replaced probably by any other species, like the Vardans, for instance, who were already in this story. But none of them were as, calculating and interesting and, I guess honestly scientific as the original, who, met these, medieval warriors and was like, I'll use you and figure this out. So
yeah, one of the things about the Vardans is there was no hint that they were being controlled by somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's something that they should have done at some point when they were first introduced, just to say, we are, following the directives of a particular intelligence or whatever, so that it doesn't just come out as a blue and you're going, wait a minute, what happened to the Vardans? And now it's the Sontarans.
Yeah, so yeah, that was strange, but I mean, even still, seeing a Sontaran is just kind of fun. Yeah. So it kind of smooths things over just a little bit to where I'm like, well, it's not an amazing story, but it works enough. So
Sontarans always make it better.
yeah. And then Kellner immediately, once the Sontarans showed up, he switched right over to them, which what ended up happening to Kellner? I guess nothing. At least not that we saw. I mean, presumably, he's thrown into the dungeons for 10 regenerations or so, but yeah, we don't really know what happened to him. So
he reminds me a little bit of the character who is kind of like the Castellan to Jabba the Hutt. The very anxious, this is Jabba the Hutt and you must do this and everything for him. And he's just, again, he's so perfectly oily, perfectly suited to that job. Although the original Castellan that we saw back, what was that? Two seasons ago, maybe?
I think it was just last season.
Oh, but he was an older man, and that made more sense because if you're going to rise to be the head of security of the Gallifreyan Citadel, then you should be an older man, not this little weasel.
Yeah, the only thing I could think, because I'm pretty sure they're not supposed to be the same Castellan, so this is a new one. One thing I could think is that, because of how slimy and conniving and ambitious he is, while he may be older, he specifically always regenerates to a younger body specifically, so he's more capable. He's not going to be like Barusa, who runs 20 feet and gets a little winded. So it could be that, because we also see that sort of thing with some of the other Time Lords earlier in the episode where, they're kind of discussing some things and one of them's like, aren't you due for a regeneration? He's like, I like to think I have wisdom beyond my years, So I would imagine it's a sort of thing of like you could regenerate into an older body, but those sort of more ambitious upstarts might choose a younger body specifically. So,
but I do like the fact that they also introduced the lore through Barusa about how you have to essentially train yourself to be disinterested, to not get emotional about things. And it was a wonderful play between Baker and Tom Baker and whoever was the actor that played Barusa. It was very good. And again, it shows how, like we mentioned before in one of the previous in-betweens, that Barusa understands the Doctor and probably the Master and the meddling monk and all these others who've gone off and done, but says, quite honestly, for us to work the way we're supposed to work, we have to recognize the standoffishness. We have to recognize the fact that we are here to observe, but every now and then if something goes wrong, we need somebody like the Doctor to go in and clean up our mess.
Yeah.
Or the mess. Somebody's mess.
Yeah. Barusa definitely strikes me the most as the politician of Gallifrey.
Very pragmatic.
Yeah. But in that, where he, with that detachment and everything, he basically embodies, the principles and everything of the Time Lords. And that also is exemplified by the fact that he keeps the key and the President does not, because he sees this and can protect it much better than any president could. And that's interesting, but I also like that you're right, he still would look at the Doctor and be like, okay, well, the Doctor can do the things that we can't, And if there is a dire situation, in case of emergency, break glass, you have that sort of in your back pocket that you can rely on him. Even if it is manipulating him into doing your dirty work, then it's still something he can rely on.
I was just thinking, there's kind of an extreme version of that in that film, A Few Good Men, where Jack Nicholson says, I'm the guy you need on the wall. You don't like the idea of him up there. You don't like the idea of what I do, but if you don't have me, you won't be able to do what is necessary.
Yeah. So,
but it's just that Barusa says, all right, I don't approve of what you do, Doctor, but I understand you're necessary.
Yeah, and probably also too because he can clearly see that the Doctor is well intentioned. I'm sure he can also see a difference between the Doctor and the Master, who takes it so much further.
The Master would have taken the DMAT gun and tried to control the universe, but he knows the Doctor will not do that.
Yeah. So, So yeah, let's see. The other stuff this episode, just going through the TARDIS was interesting. Again, it's just sort of the things... It's the things about this episode. There are good ideas and a couple good moments. There's just not really a story to go with them. I think that's the biggest problem that people have. So, honestly, I kind of enjoy it just for those moments, you know? So,
I really thought at one point they were going to do that thing where he said, hey, everybody pick a door and go through it. And then one of the Sontarans would come in and he'd go through a door and then somebody would cross out this way and then the Sontaran would come out and then somebody would go that way. I mean, I was expecting that's how low I thought they were going to go with the comedy in this.
Yeah.
But fortunately, they didn't.
Yeah. Thought they'd go the Scooby-Doo route with it. So, I think there might be one episode in, like, modern Doctor Who where they do kind of do a shot like that where they just keep going to each side and stuff.
Didn't they do something like that in The Doctor's Wife?
Maybe, yeah, because that was a lot. There was a lot of that set in the TARDIS itself. So, at least, yeah, because Amy and Rory were going through the tunnels of the TARDIS and stuff. So, but yeah, let's see. So there was. I also just want to believe that just because of Barusa, he had one line where he talked about, like, you know, can't you stabilize, you know, your TARDIS or something? I want to believe that the Doctor specifically doesn't do any of that, so that the TARDIS can be all weird and different, because to him, that's interesting. You know, he wouldn't want to be able to just walk through it and it's always, you know, the same, always exactly like the back of his hand. And I did like that moment where it's like, I know, like the back of my hand, and then Leela turns it over. So yeah, we got to see the man-eating plant room. He
and
just
it didn't
has
actually
that.
eat him. It just kept him hostage there for a few minutes. I mean, again, would have been funny if he came out and like half of his helmet was melted off or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it might have been that, you know, it's like the Sarlacc pit is like he would have been digested over 1,000 years or something, but I don't know. It's just sort of strange, and it's just strange that that the Doctor has that in the TARDIS. So, but I guess it's not going anywhere.
It's like Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
Don't feed the plants.
Yeah. So, eventually there'll be a Doctor Who episode, and it'll show the original ending of Little Shop of Horrors. There you go. And then we also saw the pool. I like that as soon as, you know, as soon as Barusa finds the pool, he does kick back, he reads the paper, he's got this, you know, crazy drink there. It's like, he's not just standing there. I like that because he knows the Doctor is going to get there eventually. So.
And just the throwaway line, just looking down at the Titanic head like, oh, I had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, so.
But I've mentioned before, in the ABC series during the 60s, the Time Tunnel, one of their episodes was where the two guys went back through the time tunnel and were stranded on the Titanic on the night that it was sinking.
Yeah, so, well, maybe they were able to save Leonardo DiCaprio. Is that how that movie ends, I think? I've never actually watched Titanic, have you?
I've watched most of it. It's a much better film, and I read the book for the first time, I think in 5th grade, called A Night to Remember. Written by, what was his name? Lieutenant Lightoller, I think. It's like one of the first lieutenants to the captain on the ship. It was his personal recollection of what happened on that night. And then they did make a movie of that. But the book is really good. If you've never read Night to Remember, excellent book.
All right. And then, yeah, eventually they got to the workshop, and the Doctor got the DMAT gun, which, you know, when they're talking about the great potential of the Great Key and how it's so dangerous that no president, even though they're entitled to it, no president of Gallifrey should ever have it. I love that the only use for it is to put it in a gun and shoot someone, you know? Like, I assume that there is far more things they could have done, but in the moment it's like, well, they're Sontarans, DMAT gun, I guess we'll use that, so So yeah, that was interesting. And it worked. And there was the whole thing at the end of, oh, the Doctor doesn't remember any of it. I'm willing to bet... See, because I was waiting for a line, like with Leela or something, where it's like he actually does remember. And I would think he did that specifically. He faked losing his memory so that Barusa would take everything and he could leave and not be the president. I would assume it's that. Yeah. And that he just didn't randomly lose his memory of it all. So, I mean, even if he loses his memory, he was already inducted, so I don't think it really, it really counts, but I don't know. But yeah. And then at the end, so I was right that Leela was going to stay behind. I kind of figured the reason would be more towards the barbarians, but it was more towards Andred, which was kind of odd. But I assume they will go off and live in the wilderness of Gallifrey, so...
One would hope that, I mean, again, perfect line in there would have been, Doctor, I want to stay behind, not just because of Andred, but because I want to help the people outside the Citadel. And the Barusa said, well, yes, that's a very noble aspiration sort of thing.
Yeah, because that is the thing, is that that means Barusa is allowing an alien to remain on Gallifrey. So, and it's just sort of it is just a very strange place to leave a companion on Gallifrey specifically. So,
and where did the Mark II come from? Did he have it built somewhere? Did he have?
I don't know, because K9 was someone else's. So what I'm assuming then is that the Professor Marius, I think, in that episode, presumably he just got this on Space Amazon or something, and he just happened to have the Mark I, and then within the last few weeks or so, maybe the Doctor saw that a Mark II was coming out, so he pre-ordered it or something. I don't know. But it's also interesting because it's okay, you have the perfect excuse to get rid of K9, who nobody really liked. He was always a pain to, control and everything. So what I can only assume in bringing in a Mark II is that it's actually a better updated thing for them to wheel around the set and everything. So... I don't know. That's very strange, but I do like the original K9 staying back with Leela because ever since that episode first introduced K9, I was like, this is an interesting dynamic of a hunting girl and a robot dog. Just I don't know. It sounds like, honestly, it sounds like a Nickelodeon show in the early 2000s. So yeah, but. That's the end of Leela now. So, when did we get her? That was back half of season 14, so about a season and a half we had her. So, I think I might have an idea of who comes next, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't know. This is where any knowledge on the Fourth Doctor starts getting fuzzy for me. So, and obviously, at this point, we didn't have any episodes that we watched the first time around. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Yeah, so decent episodes, some good ideas, but not a great story to go with them. So yeah. Next time, we start season 16 with... Once I get up there, just gotta remove that real quick. 16 starts with the Ribos operation.
Ribos?
Huh. Ribos?
R-I-B-O-S, looks like.
Yeah, the Ribos operation. So, we'll start with that. All right, then. And hopefully next week we will not be coughing as much. No guarantees, though.
No guarantees.
With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from Sympathar Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as another playlist for all of my modern Doctor Who reactions if you want to go check any of those out. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.